Hey friend, a little bit of a different style video today. And essentially what I want to talk about is the only songwriting tip that matters. The only one at all that in the end ultimately matters. And if you're a longtime listener, watcher, etc., be sure to stick around for the end because there's going to be an important announcement. But for now, what is that single tip, the only songwriting tip that matters? And that is to be biased towards actually songwriting. That means not thinking about songwriting, not doing things that are tangential to songwriting, no playing around on your guitar without the intent of songwriting isn't songwriting. Thinking about lyrics isn't songwriting. There's many things that we do that, especially I think as creatives, there's this ability to fool ourselves into sort of being in a creative mode while just waiting for the ether to gift us with some song out of nowhere. And that's just trash. That's just trash. And the thing that we ultimately need to do is, yes, there's many different tips and tricks and, music theory concepts and lyric writing concepts that I've taught here throughout the years and that other people on YouTube talk about as well. Those are all important. I'm not diminishing those. But they're only important insofar as you actually write songs. You could learn all the music theory in the world. You could take all the time in the world to learn about all your favorite bands and music history and music theory and all the sorts of things, which, by the way, music history is actually almost worthless when it comes to songwriting. Music theory isn't, but we could take all those things, and at the end of the day, if you don't actually write songs, you're not really getting anywhere. And we all can fall into this trap. We all can fall into this trap where we let days, weeks, months even go by where we haven't really done much songwriting, but it just kind of sneaks up on you because life happens. And I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and very intentionally was like, I'm going to take a step back from songwriter theory. I'm going to get some songwriting done. I'm going to reevaluate certain things. And one of the things that I wanted to accomplish in those 2 weeks was figuring out, what really do I care about doing? What really are my priorities? Because sometimes, maybe if we aren't writing songs, it's because we're not prioritizing it and because it's not really as important to us as we think it is. Sometimes it's just that it's easy to let other things get in the way, including things that are more worthwhile. Because, for instance, I refuse to let songwriting or anything else get in the way of time with my daughter. I'm just not going to do it. If I had to choose between being a good father and writing songs, luckily I don't have to choose between them, but if I did, I would choose being a good dad every time. Because ultimately that matters way more than whatever my creative ambitions may be. But it's important, I think, to know what those priorities are. Because we can let silly things like watching Netflix get in the way of songwriting. We can let even generally worthwhile things like teaching songwriting get in the way of actually songwriting. Right? There have absolutely been times where I'm so heads down on teaching songwriting and trying to, make a better video and put out a podcast and do all the things associated with songwriter theory that sometimes there have been like a couple weeks go by and I start being in a bad mood and even resenting sometimes what I'm doing here on songwriter theory. And I think to myself, why? Why do I feel this way? I like teaching songwriting. And then the obvious comes to the forefront. It's because you're not doing the thing, the thing you actually care about. The reason that I love talking about songwriting and teaching songwriting is because I love songwriting. It's all downstream from my love of songwriting, which is maybe downstream of my love of creativity combined with love of music and things like that. But it's so easy for you to watch another songwriting video right now, right? So easy for you to listen to another songwriting podcast. But you actually have to write songs. You actually have to write songs. And not just think about writing songs. Here's a thing that I think we fall into a lot as songwriters, is we sit and we think about lyrics, or we sit and we think about the music or the song or what's a great song title. And there's certainly value in stopping and thinking for a second. I'm not trying to diminish that. But a lot of times, the best way to do those things is to just write. Just do the thing. In the words of Yoda, do or do not. There is no try, right? Just do the thing. Oftentimes, if I find myself just staring at, the lyrics that I'm writing, trying to think of something good, I realize, no, just iterate on it. Write a line without thinking about it, just first thing that comes to mind, and then from that line say, nope, that's trash, and write a different one. Or just iterate on that line. If you thought, okay, that line is saying what I want to say, but it's not quite worded right. Or maybe there's, I could swap out a kind of meh verb for a better verb, a more evocative verb, a more precise verb. And that is what ultimately results in songs being written, is being biased towards actually acting, not staring at a blank page, not sitting at our keyboard, not sitting in our backyard with a cigar thinking about songwriting and waxing poetic. Actually writing. And a part of what has inspired me, I've talked about this before. This isn't the first time. I just wanted to re-talk about it in a different style video, and it connects to some changes that I'm going to make. So I thought it was probably worth talking about, because also, hopefully, I'm trying to turn this into something that maybe you can take away from. Maybe you think, oh, crap, he's talking to me. This was the third songwriting video I've watched, and I haven't really been writing as much as I should. I've been thinking about writing, but I haven't actually been writing. Or I've been, sitting there trying to be philosophical without actually putting pen to paper. But one of my favorite people creatively that I personally find inspiring is not actually a songwriter, and I've mentioned this person before, but Brandon Sanderson, who I think is the perfect example of what a true creative should be in the modern era. He's biased towards actually doing rather than thinking. He's known for writing a lot of books. He's also known for very high-quality books. He's probably in the top 5 current fantasy writers for a reason. He teaches as well, and he puts his course online for free for all of us to learn from. He's pretty good at connecting one art form to another as well, which I think is important. If you've been a listener for a long time, you know that I'm big on, hey, as songwriters, we can and should learn from other type of artists other than just other songwriters. Because sometimes a painter has something to offer a songwriter that another songwriter just would never teach us. That is actually valuable to songwriting. Same thing with an author, right? In Brandon Sanderson's case. But he also has these, he literally keeps track of his word count, and he has progress bars for his novels to keep him accountable, to actually be biased towards actually writing and actually making progress. And he's talked about, look, we're all human. Sometimes we all will be like, you know what? It's just, sometimes writing just isn't as, no matter how much you love something, and he loves writing, and I love songwriting, and I'm sure you love songwriting, that's probably why you're watching this video. Even though you do truly love songwriting, sometimes it's just easier to play that video game. Sometimes it's easier to turn on Netflix, to watch another episode of whatever you're watching right now. And he talked about that even he is human and struggles with those things. And he talks about how it's a terrible thing to tell people that, oh, you're not meant to be a writer, you're not meant to be an author, if you feel those draws, because those draws are just human. So anyway, there's a lot of things that Brandon Sanderson I just admire as a creative person in basically every way imaginable. And over the 2 weeks where I was taking a break, I wasn't doing anything songwriter theory, I was intentionally kind of dialing back, trying to reevaluate things. I was consuming a lot of his stuff because even though, I'm not an author, I write songs, although I do like all forms of writing, and I used to write stories, and I kind of want to get back into that as well. But that was something that helped me along the way towards thinking about reprioritization. So in the name of, we're talking about you have to actually do the thing. Another thing that Brandon mentioned is this idea of thinking about, in the future, what are going to be the things that you are most glad you did. So when you're 70, when you're 75, when you're 80, when, God willing, you're on your deathbed at like 90 or whenever you want that to be, what are the things that you're going to look back on and be like, I'm so glad I did those things. And right now, if you think about what you think those things would be, those are the things that we need to be spending time on, right? And something I did over the last couple of weeks was really look at, like, what are the things that are most important to me? Beyond the important stuff like, my wife and daughter and all that, which should go without saying, but that's number one. Obviously, or this should be obvious, what ranked higher than songwriter theory, though this is important to me, and no, I'm not quitting, so if you're worried, that's not what's happening. Songwriting, and actually releasing music. I am proud of many of the videos that I've done. I'm proud of the fact that I've more or less consistently pumped out content that I think is at least generally valuable over the past several years. It's not an easy thing to do. It's way easier to watch Netflix or do what most people do, which is consume content, not create it. And I'm certainly proud of the courses that I've made. If you didn't know, Complete Songwriter Academy, super proud of that. Have a new one that's Songwriter Jumpstart. That's really meant for somebody if you haven't written any songs at all and you just want me to make it super simple, 4, 3.5 sort of easy steps. Just do these things, boom, you will have written a song. I'm proud of those things. But if I were 75, 80, 85, looking back, thinking about what are the things that I wish I had done, or what are the things I'm most proud of having done. Again, ignoring personal stuff, right? Being a great husband and father, of course, way more important. But beyond that, releasing music is the number one thing. Not any measure of success and how many people heard it and all that. We can't control that, and that's a whole separate discussion. But having released music, if I knew that I had only 5 years left, and my daughter at that point would be like 6.5. If I could choose to leave her these sorts of videos, or to like get to know her dad, or songs, it would be songs. And you may say, Joseph, that's dark. Why are we getting dark? And first of all, I would say, do you know me at all? And second of all, this is reality, right? We only have so much time. And another thing Brandon Sanderson brought up, which is totally true, as you get older, and I know I'm only 31, right? But it's never too early to start thinking about this. I think we like the idea that we have time for all the things, but that's not true. That's not true. Even if your favorite thing in the world to do and the only thing you care about doing in the world gets to be your day job, like in Brandon Sanderson's case, literally all he had, like, he can just write books. And even he can't write as many books as he would like to write. And he's having to think about how he only has so much time left. And he has to choose which books to write and which books to not write. Then certainly you and I, who likely want to write songs, want to release songs, and, for most of us, it probably isn't our day job. It isn't the only thing that we do. We have to do other things in order to put food on the table, to live, to not be on the streets. So we have to pick and choose. And so if you haven't, something I highly encourage you to do is really list out what are the things that I want to have done, or I will have wanted to have done, whatever the phrasing is, when you're 70, when you're 75, when you're 85. If you realize, for instance, that you actually would rather have written a book, a novel, a sci-fi novel, a historical fiction novel, something, than songwriting, and you're songwriting instead of doing that, maybe you should reverse that. Or if you're spending more time on songwriting and less time on the thing you care about more, you should switch that around. Similarly, if you realize, when you're 70, you're not going to care about the fact that you watched The Office for the 5th time, but you will have cared about the music you released. Then maybe it's time to put the remote down, walk out of that room with the temptation of the TV, and write songs. It's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to be a productive songwriting session. Creativity, there's a lot of idealism around it. It's work, right? It's work. And there are frustrating days and there are rewarding days. And sometimes those days are the same. Sometimes the frustrating day is the rewarding day because you work through the frustration and get to something that's really worthwhile. But it's important to know what those are so that you can make sure that the time in your life is being put towards the things that are actually most important in a way that makes sense. So if you've been a listener for a while, you know that my bugaboo has always, I can't believe I use the term bugaboo, but we're going to ignore that, right? You're going to be a nice, not typical YouTube commenter and be like, use that bugaboo. But it's never been songwriting, although certainly there are times where, we're all human, right? But for the most part, for me, it's been releasing, getting to that final step, which largely was due to recording vocals. Right, we've talked about this, but if you don't know, that's my thing. I have something like 25, maybe 30 songs that I think are release worthy, meaning songs that I've finished or have almost finished and even have mostly recorded in a lot of cases that I think are good enough to be worthy of releasing. Right, there's other stuff that I write and I'm like, okay, that will never see the light of day. But I have like 25, 30, maybe more songs that are like there and haven't finished them. And I've spent a lot of time on songwriter theory. To the point that over the past several years, I've definitely spent more time on songwriter theory trying to grow this than I have on actually doing the thing itself, which is stupid. It's stupid because the thing that I care about most is the songwriting. And it's not that I stopped songwriting and just started teaching songwriting. No, of course, I've kept songwriting. I've become a much better songwriter because of teaching, actually. Like the songs I write today and have in the past couple years compared to even 5-6 years ago, way better. Anything compared to the original album I released with my band, most of those songs make me cringe. Even the ones that I was super proud of at the time, I now think, I was 18, pretty good for an 18-year-old, sure. So I'm proud of them in that way. But, they still would get significant rework if I were to write them today. They might not even be released. A lot of them wouldn't have been released if I were writing them today because they're just not up to the standard. So, but that being said, it doesn't make sense to spend more time on songwriter theory than on songwriting. And at the same time, there have been times where maybe I resented the fact that songwriter theory was getting in the way of songwriting because of certain things I felt obligated to do. And what I want is to make sure that what I do is quality. And always, there's always going to be some random, right? Sometimes you put out a video and it just isn't good, not because you didn't try, not because you didn't put your effort into making it quality, but just because that's how it works sometimes, right? Bands release bad songs. Great directors make crap movies. Just ask Ridley Scott, who hasn't done anything right in the last it's 20 years since Gladiator 1, and now he's trying to make Gladiator 2, and it's like, please stop. Gladiator is perfect. It's perfect. Just leave it alone, Ridley. But he won't listen to me. And it's too late. But I want to make sure that the quality is kept up and that songwriter theory doesn't get in the way of songwriting. And I'm really aiming to release the first EP that I've been working on in October, which is coming up fast. So I want to spend as much time as possible on just finishing up the vocals. That's all I have left. I'm pretty far along, very doable goal. And from here on out, I want to release at least one single and then a 5-song EP every single year for the rest of my life. Super doable, especially since I have a huge head start, because probably if I put my mind to it, I could release like 4 EPs in the next 6 months because I have so many songs that are like right there. But I want to take my time, do it right, but also actually do the thing, right? And when I say actually do the thing, I mean make progress every day. I even made a thing modeled after Brandon Sanderson's. He found, he has word count to measure exactly how far along he is in a book to keep him incentivized. So I made a song version of it. Let me know, by the way, if that's something that you'd be interested in me putting out there or something that you all can grab. Just as an idea. This is my first version. I might trash it and make a new one, but because I figure, you know what, I think I work that way too. I like seeing percentages and seeing percentages go up. That motivates me as well. But the main thing here, to the announcement part, is as far as the Songwriter Theory podcast, for many reasons, I've decided to at least put it on hiatus until the end of the year. The plan for now is that I will continue, or go back to, I should say, because it's been a little off lately for sure. But I want to go back to aiming for a weekly video on YouTube. I'm not stopping. But the Songwriter Theory podcast, for now at least, is going to be on hiatus. And admittedly, I can't promise that it's coming back. I love the podcast. There are times that I've resented it because sometimes I can't figure out, is this a podcast episode? Is this a video? Because I don't want to make what should be a 10-minute video into a 45-minute podcast. And I also don't want to put out a 10-minute video that should have been a 45-minute podcast. So there's always that debate, which has been, on and off with being frustrating. And I do like the new version of the podcast that I start with, but it's so much work. It takes up so much time. And I like the simplicity of videos, recording a video, editing it, getting it to be, 10 minutes or so, communicate something. And also I want to do more shorts, because that's something where sometimes I just have an idea of like a little tip to give. So turn on the camera, give the tip, and call it a day. And that's the sort of thing that after spending time on songwriting, sometimes I'll think of something like that and it's like midnight. I'm not going to get out the camera and record a whole podcast or even record a video like this, probably. But I will pull out my phone and be like, hey, I was just songwriting and here's something that I thought of. Hopefully it's helpful to you as well. So again, Songwriter Theory podcast, for now, at least until the end of the year, is on hiatus. So I can finish that EP, put it out. And also there's a Christmas single that I'm working, that I want to get out as well. So that'll be 6 total songs. And then after that, there's a bunch of other stuff in the works. But I want to shift to spending more time on songwriting, more like 2.5 hours a day instead of like 1 hour a day, and less on Songwriter Theory, because it shouldn't get in the way of the thing that matters most. Again, Songwriter Theory, not going anywhere. I fully intend, as of recording this, for Songwriter Theory to exist until I'm past Rick Beato's age. And this is going to come across like shade on Rick Beato. Rick Beato's the GOAT. He's amazing. But he's a lot older than me, right? So for me to still be on YouTube, even when I'm his age, that's a long time. That's a long time. And, I don't plan on ever stopping. It's not a promise that it never will, but that's not what I'm saying here. Songwriter Theory podcast is on hiatus. And again, can't promise that it's coming back. I may find that, I just like doing the video thing. The podcast isn't worth the time. I don't know. That's the truthful thing. I don't know. If you think, Joseph, I'm absolutely devastated that you would stop the podcast, that's my favorite thing you do. I didn't even know you released videos, which I don't know how that could be true at this point, but maybe that's you. I don't know. Shoot me an email. Let me know. Also, another thing you can do, I'm going to put this out on the podcast feed as sort of the de facto announcement that, hey, guys, the podcast is stopping for now at least. But, you can also leave, if you've been putting off leaving a review on the podcast, you think, man, this has been super helpful, and I just haven't left a review, now is the time to do it, right? Because if I make this announcement and nobody says anything and it just, it just kind of is like nothing ever happened, then that will be a sign to me, maybe I shouldn't be doing the podcast. Maybe I should double down on video. Or maybe not double down, but just focus on the simplicity of just make a video, make it good. Don't have to worry about video versus podcast versus all this other stuff. It's just make a video, make it good. Makes it simpler. But yeah, I don't know. I only have so much time. I need to dedicate more to songwriting than songwriter theory, so I have to pick and choose. And right now, the picking and choosing is not the podcast, but videos. Again, shoot me an email, write a comment if you're on YouTube. Let me know if, you're somebody that's personally devastated by the idea of this Songwriter Theory podcast going away for now, or possibly forever, or maybe moving into a just whenever I think of an episode, maybe once a month, maybe less, I don't know. Again, I really don't know whether it's coming back, what it will look like. I like the idea of interviewing songwriters, but that also takes time to put together. And, I still have to have a day job as of right now, for sure. And that all matters, right? That's just time that I don't have. So, if there's a takeaway from this video, which there should be, let's go back to the beginning. Make sure you're actually doing the thing. And take the time this week, be alone for a little bit and really just write down the things that are most important. If you could only choose to do one thing or be good at one thing, what is that thing? Right? And hopefully for everybody, your family is the first thing, right? God and family is first. But after that, which should be a given, after that, what is it? Is it songwriting? Lay off the Netflix. Maybe read fewer books. Watch fewer of these videos, even if these videos are getting in the way of actually songwriting. And, not to be as a songwriting channel, but look, if you realize, no, you care about writing a book more than, let's say you're 70 years old and you want to write a book and you want to write songs. If you realize a book's more important to you, maybe work on the book instead. Not because I want to discourage you from songwriting. I just want you to do the thing that you are most creatively called to do, whatever that is. Because, yeah, I'm a songwriter and a songwriter podcast and all that, and songwriter channel. But ultimately, I see myself as a creative first and foremost, partially because there's many other creative things that I've been interested in besides songwriting. Songwriting is just my favorite by a good margin, but I like writing in general. The idea of writing a novel and short stories and things like that absolutely appeals to me. Even the idea of drawing or painting could appeal to me if I had any talent whatsoever in that department, which I don't. So that makes it really easy to just not do those things. But I want you to do whatever it is that you are called to do creatively, whether that be songwriting or something else. That, I think, is what's important. We only have so much time. Think about what you're putting your time into. Maybe stop consumption, whether that be books, movies, YouTube shorts, YouTube videos. Dial that back and make sure that the hours you're putting every day line up with the things you actually care about having done. The things that when you're 80 and you're thinking back on your life, you'll be like, thank God I did those things. Make sure you are actually doing those things. If the most important thing to you is released music, be working towards released music relentlessly. And don't let other things get in the way, like dreaming about making music. Actually make music. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If this has inspired you to actually start writing a song, go check out my free guide, songwritertheory.com/free guide. Talks about 20 different ways to start writing a song. It's a short cheat sheet. Should be super easy. Something that I like doing when I'm sitting down to start writing a song. I just think about one of those things and go from there. Because sometimes I'm really not inspired to do a piano riff anymore because I start a lot of songs with piano riffs. So instead, starting a song with a bass line is like, ooh, this is new and exciting again. Or starting with a song title and reverse engineering from a song title. Like, what do I think that song title would be about? There's so many great ways to start songs. Don't get stuck in just doing one way over and over again. For a lot of songwriters, it's just starting with a chord progression over and over and over again. I think there are many great ways to start songs, not just chord progressions. So be sure to check that out, songwritingtheory.com/free guide. Hopefully you like this different style of video. I don't know, maybe I'll do more of them, maybe I won't. Maybe there'll be shorter versions of these. Maybe this is the one and only time that you will get a largely unedited video that's kind of a hybrid between a video and a podcast and is a little more intimate. And for those couple commenters through the years who've been like, why do you shout in your videos? Here you go. This was a very non-shouty video. It's very low-key. The lights are darker. I don't know. Maybe those people will be happy now. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. Keep songwriting, especially if you realize, like I do, that the most important thing ultimately to you, besides family and all the other things that matter the most, if songwriting is your ultimate creative endeavor, make sure you're spending time on actually songwriting. Do or do not. There is no try.